want you to imagine a room. It's stark and white, no windows, no doors, just a girl tied to a chair. Hands tied behind her back, tape over her mouth. No matter how hard she tries, to scream, to yell for help, to express herself, to express her worries and her doubts, only muffled sounds come out. Now this girl, she doesn't have any agency. She is being physically silenced. And now I want you to imagine another room, this one only bringing more color and perspective and livelihood. You see whiteboards and posters painting the walls. You see teachers walking in and out. You see students having conversations about assignments, how bad that last test went, or relationships, or even gossip. But when class starts, when we start that history discussion that we all love or dread, in this girl's mind, only one voice rings clear. It's her own voice, telling her, put that hand down. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't bother participating. Your voice belongs nowhere. Your head belongs down. Your hand belongs at your side. No matter how much time she spends watching crash course videos on 20th century history, she still feels inadequate. And she is also silenced. As students, as youth, we tend to hear the term, voice or finding your voice. And we hear it so much, it almost becomes cliche. It is like something, brimming with inspiration on the outside. But when you really try to, speak up, it can often seem very daunting and very overwhelming. And even when you happen to find your voice, maybe under all of that self-doubt, under all of those, crumpled pieces of paper and dirty laundry in that corner of your bedroom, taking that and turning that into action is a whole different battle. From those external barriers that make youth advocacy so out of reach, to internal struggles with confidence and imposter syndrome that tell you that your voice does not make sense. All of these things contribute to why students don't choose to speak up, why leadership is so difficult. But I'm not here to give you a solution. I'm still figuring it out myself. Instead, I want to have a conversation. I want to discuss some personal experiences, and hopefully together we can rid that stigma that everyone has to be perfect, find your voice, yada yada, and truly give some tips as to how we can find our voice in reality. So, as you may know, I am the student trustee for the Halton District School Board, and a lot of times I get students asking me questions about leadership. Of course, I am no expert, but I've accumulated 3 of the most popular questions that I would love to address with you all today. The first one being, how did you get into leadership? How did your leadership journey start? How did you find your voice and the courage to represent students? And before I want to jump into that, let's go through some common misconceptions of leadership. I think the first one being that leadership and advocacy is a linear journey. It's something kind of like a hero's journey, something that has a direct, journey and pathway, etc. Like for instance, I saw this amazing video on YouTube about this certain cause, and now I am such an advocate for it. I want to speak, for the trees. I want to speak for human rights. I want to advocate for mental health. Just with that click, with that light bulb, you suddenly become passionate and want to be an advocate. Or secondly, it's commonly maybe associated that you have to be born a leader. You either are born shy and quiet, and you don't really want to talk, you don't really want to participate, or you're born a strong leader who wants to advocate for change. And I'm here to tell you that all of that is completely false. And as a child, I'll give you a bit of insight here. I always thought of myself not as a leader, but there's something in my personality that hinted at it, because I was always very bossy. Not towards my friends or anything like that, but especially towards my siblings, like my younger brother, or towards my family friends. I remember I would like constantly be like pushing them, on the playground, or telling them to go get me ice cream even though I was like 2 feet away. All those little things you do at age 10. But when I started growing up, by the time I reached grade 7, I felt kind of bored at school, so I wanted to take a risk, and I tried out for student council. Of course, student council made out of maybe 11 and 12-year-olds, maybe does not have as much responsibility as those in high school. But either way, I remember writing this jam-packed, 3-minute long speech, all these 20 promises that I wanted to give to my class of grade 7 and 8 students. And I felt really passionate. I was really excited because, I love the spotlight. I'm a dancer after all. I go to present it, the results come in, and I lose. And there was something in me that was like, okay, that's okay. I didn't care for whatever this is, student council anyway. Let me just go back to my desk and do math or draw or talk to my friends. But the year after, I tried again, and I still didn't get it. I still didn't get into student council. Maybe it just wasn't my calling. But when I got to grade 9, I was like, okay, Kaitlyn, I really want to try this. And I want to try getting involved in some way, shape, or form. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm passionate. I don't know what advocacy is. I don't know what my voice is. I don't know what I really like or what I want to stand for, but let me just try it out. And I saw a poster near my school's library advertising something called the Student Senate Subcommittees. And I was like, this looks really interesting. Very nice rainbow poster. So I applied to the Learning and Achievement Subcommittee. That's what it was called back then when I was in grade 9. And I wrote this long application. I got in. I was super excited. I attended a few meetings and I absolutely loved it. But I didn't love that I was, representing students or that I was advocating for students. I loved it because I got to meet some friends and I got to discuss issues within the education system that impact me every day. I got to relate to those long nights, spent studying or procrastination or not being prepared for high school and struggling a bit at the beginning. I got to talk about all those things, and that lived experience really pushed me to enjoy talking about it more, enjoy advocating for that more. And that's why in grade 10, I decided to run for student trustee. Even that, I honestly didn't really know, what did this role really entail? I was never on Senate. I didn't take part too much in student leadership. But I thought, since I love talking about this so much, why not share my voice with more students, more senators, even, it's kind of scary for me, but some adults as well. And I was very, very fortunate to be elected and to be re-elected this year. So yeah, I think that story kind of goes to show that a lot of the stigmas and stereotypes surrounding leadership is completely false. Because when I was younger, honestly, I didn't really like, hosting events or getting up on stage and public speaking. I didn't really like, engaging in certain discussions that I didn't feel passionate about, because I didn't really know how to carry myself, and I felt scared that if I said something wrong, it would be embarrassing or I would feel like a failure. But as your journey persists, no matter what happens, you do learn. And despite so many failures, despite things I'm not talking about right now, like late nights trying to edit my speech only to get up in front of my whole class and fumble, or those times where I'm maybe at a board meeting and I remove myself from the speakers list because I don't really think that what I have to say matters. I'm still learning and growing, and that's one of the biggest takeaways I want you guys to know about student leadership. So the second question that I often get asked is, what's stopping students from taking these leadership roles? What's stopping us, and how can we go past those barriers? And I would like to identify two major barriers. First one, I guess these are pretty obvious and cliche, but it's still important to talk about. First one being, our environments. We often see, maybe in countries outside of Canada, or even in Canada's history, specific minority groups being silenced physically, by the government. They're being ignored, they're not being invited into the room, they're not being invited to the table to discuss issues that pertain to them. And that can kind of relate back to that room with the girl, with tape against her mouth. She physically cannot talk because she can't. Her mouth is literally being taped closed. But I think majority of the time, especially within our student lives, we're not being physically silenced, but rather there's something in the environment that intimidates us or makes us feel embarrassed. Maybe it's a room full of adults all wearing suits, all networking and chatting with each other, and you feel alone. You feel like you don't belong, and that's why you decide, oh hey, maybe I'll just stand in the corner and eat a cookie. Or maybe it's in a room, even with your friends too, but when the teacher calls on you, you feel like the other people in the room might judge you for it. A lot of these environmental triggers can often lead to students not wanting to speak up. I think another big thing that we can talk about is systematic barriers, especially when it comes to ageism and seeing maybe younger students or younger youth, just youth in general, as not being as capable of adults because they don't have as much lived experience, which I think is completely false, because the amount of experience we have doesn't really matter, but it's rather about the uniqueness of it. We all have individual lives, as you all know, so I think everyone's experience is very unique and very important. But the second thing I want to talk about that I actually grapple with a lot is more of that internal type of barrier. It's the voice in your head that tells you to put your hand down, or it's the voice in your head that tells you that maybe you shouldn't take that TED talk. Maybe you shouldn't take that opportunity because you don't really have anything good to say anyway. Or even something I really grapple with, because I tend to want to be a perfectionist, is to back out of opportunities because you think that you are not qualified in the first place, or that I won't get it, so I'm not going to waste my time with it. I don't know everything about this subject, so I'm not going to do it. I used to have that mentality, and that probably is what led me to failing at student council so many times. But by changing and shifting that narrative that you have to be perfect, that you have to know everything, you're able to, find so many opportunities to lead. When I'm looking at applications for Senate, for subcommittees, or for different councils, I don't look to see who has the most stacked resume. I don't look to see who has 25 years of experience in Senate at age 10. Rather, I look at your stories, and I look at your experiences, and I look at your ideas. What do you identify as issues within our school system, and what do you want to change? How can you better advocate, I guess, but also have these discussions, and what can you do as merely a student, but not merely, as a student, to cultivate that change? That's kind of what I look for, and that's some of the values that I hold after kind of my initial leadership journey. But finally, one of the biggest questions is, students coming up to me and asking, hey Kaitlyn, how can I be a leader? How can I find my voice? I may not be the best public speaker, I may not have that much experience, but how can I engage in maybe some of the activities that you do, or find these opportunities? And to start this session off, I really want to talk also about another misconception, and that's that you have to be perfect again. You have to dress up very professionally, you have to do your hair nice, you have to also be the loudest one in the room and present yourself in a really artificial way that makes you seem like you're an adult. Because that's the only way you can get people's attention, and that's how you can get people's respect, by trying to be an adult, by dressing in a nice suit and tie, and pretending like you're someone you're not. And I think that's something that really, really annoys me about how we treat leadership these days, because the loudest person in the room, sure, they can be a leader, but how about the person who maybe created the whole slideshow and didn't decide to present it because they weren't there or because they didn't want to? Or how about the person who started, a discussion with their friend and decided to loop everyone in? How about that individual who comments under every single Google Classroom post or always responds to their emails for the whole team? All of these people are leaders, and you being here today demonstrates your ability to be a leader or to be more of a leader that you already are. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you want to be a leader, I think the best thing is just to channel yourself, to be confident within yourself, to, even if you don't know your voice, which is totally okay, because even adults who are like 50, 60, 70 years old, who have lived a whole life, still don't know who they are. I think knowing who you are and finding your voice at the end of the day is pretty overrated, because you always change based off of your environment, based off of who you are, based off of where you are on your leadership journey. But trying to embrace what you know in the moment and just going for it, doing the application, trying out for a team, having that conversation, shaking hands with someone that you don't know. All these things can help you become a better leader. So to end off, I want to take us back to those two rooms. The first room is dark and white, where the silence is staggering. It presses on your chest. And this metaphor may not just be a metaphor, but a memory, a feeling that all of you maybe have had, where you really want to speak, but you felt like you were incapable of it because of that environment. Or let's talk about the second room, brimming with color and support, but the only thing stopping you is that little whisper in your head telling you that you're not enough and that you don't have anything good to say. Both of these experiences, they are real and they occur every day. For me, they occur every day. When I walk into a room with, so many adults and all of these administrators, I feel like I don't really know what I'm talking about. I engage in a 5-minute yap session about something that I don't even know what I'm really saying. Or even when I get up here, I fumble my words kind of. All of these things definitely contribute to self-doubt, but you just got to push forward. And something that really keeps me going, I would say, is to know that these rooms can change, right? You can push open those doors, open those windows. You can paint the walls different colors to suit your needs. Because all of you, again, as young leaders, you still have a bright future ahead of you. Your leadership journey isn't something that's straight. It isn't something with a final destination, but it's something that allows you to continue learning. So, try your best to customize your room to your desire, no matter where you end up, and try to take that tape off of your mouth, no matter how scared you are, no matter if you don't know your real voice, because taking that tape off makes you a leader, because it might motivate someone else to take their tape off too. Thank you.